Air 456. Don't get any absurd ideas. Just get on that plane. It's for your own good.
Welcome back, everyone. This will be my full Netflix Squid Game video for the ending, all the Easter eggs. There's so many WTF moments and references that we have to talk about. It is probably one of the best, most messed up things that you will watch all year long. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos, and big spoiler warning for everything that happened on Squid Game if you have not seen the episodes yet. There's so many messed up things that we have to talk about, so many clues that foreshadowed all the big twists. They actually did a really good job of setting up and foreshadowing everything that was revealed in the last couple of episodes. But we'll just start with the ending. So there are two concurrent storylines during the series. The main character who's playing inside the games themselves, and then the police officer who's infiltrated the island trying to find his long-lost older brother. The sixth and final game that they're forced to play is the Squid Game itself, paying off that opening scene from the very first episode. Like, literally the first couple of minutes of the series is them as children. If it wasn't clear, these are the main characters playing the Squid Game as little kids. The opening scene was meant to be a metaphor for the entire series and foreshadow everything that was going to happen, and foreshadow the big twist with the old man and the real reason why he created the games in the first place with the other rich businessmen. To give everyone a chance to feel alive, to enjoy themselves, but just doing it in the most extreme WTF way possible. Have a chance to feel powerful, and like they actually had a chance at winning. Now, of course, that doesn't make the old man or any of the businessmen good people. They're all extremely sadistic and masochistic as hell, so we'll get to that. His whole deathbed confession doesn't absolve him of all the terrible, terrible things he did for the last 30 plus years with the games. But the main character is only able to win that final Squid Game because his childhood best friend sacrifices himself, trying to do something good, having just betrayed a whole bunch of people in the previous episodes. The whole idea being that only one of them was allowed to win, so one of them was going to have to wind up killing the other, or they had to find some other way to win the game. Because even though technically there was the rule that everyone could vote to stop the games, like all the survivors could use a majority vote to cancel the rest of the games, but if they did that, then they weren't allowed to take home any of the prize money, which was considerable by that point. So the idea at this point in episode 9 is that they've come so far, so many contestants have died, some of them had been their friends, that they were just beyond the point of no return. Like, we've come this far, we can't stop now. Once he does wind up winning, he gets his 45 billion Korean won, which is about $38 million, so it is a giant pile of money. And just like the police officer in the other storyline, he eventually learns the real truth of the games, who was behind them, why the games existed in the first place, and what it all means. The police officer had come to the island after finding a Squid Game business card amongst his brother's belongings, trying to find him, just believing that he had disappeared and fallen off the face of the earth. So when he found his brother's Squid Game business card, he believed that he had somehow gotten caught up in these games without really knowing what was going on with the games at the time. What he does wind up finding is that his older brother was the winner of the 2015 games, so he would have survived, and then later we learned that the mysterious frontman who's been administering the games this whole time, whose face we don't see until that final episode, is the man's older brother that he's been searching for this whole time. It's meant to be this huge WTF shocking reveal that goes hand in hand with the reveal of the old man's true identity, which the main character also learns at the end of the finale. It was the old man this whole time. Some of you may have actually guessed early and been following the clues, which I will point out in a second. What he explains is that he and his friends created the Squid Game Corporation that funds the games, like they created the games themselves with this umbrella corporation, because they had grown bored spending all their money, their vast wealth, on all the regular vices. Drugs, fancy cars, hookers just weren't doing it for him, so they created games based on the games that they played as children, trying to go back to basics, literally, but turning them into a battle royale Running Man situation, game of death, whereby you had the chance of winning millions and millions of dollars, but if you lost a game or if you broke the rules, you were killed. But the old man reveals that he had entered the games himself because he was getting ready to die, which he does in the finale, but he had wanted to have one last chance at enjoying himself, one last big thrill before he goes out, which he did successfully several times. Like I said, there were several clues and Easter eggs that foreshadowed the big reveal of his identity, but the actual episode itself ends on a cliffhanger, despite the fact that the creator said that he didn't initially plan for a season 2, and Netflix, as of right now, hasn't ordered it yet. Even though they claim that within the first week or so of it airing, about 100 million people have actually watched the series. It's Netflix's most popular series of all time. But the big cliffhanger ends with the main character giving half of his winnings, half of the $38 million, to the mother of his best friend who sacrificed himself, and it's meant to be a big callback to the scene in episode 1 where he claimed that his friend owes him some of the money that he was making because he's this big successful businessman and he was responsible for getting him through school so that he could get his job, complaining that his friend should at least buy him a drink. So because his friend was responsible ultimately for the main character winning the last game, he felt like he owed his friend half of the money. And the small child that he takes under his wing and then sets up for this better future, giving him to the mother to take care of, was him keeping the promise that he made to his female main character best friend before she died. The kid was her little brother. She'd been playing the games to earn money to bring the rest of her family across the border from North Korea. There were also a couple clues that gave that away before they reveal the true flashbacks. But the main character is getting ready to visit his daughter, who's finally moved to America, but as he heads to his plane, he sees the recruiter from episode 1 trying to convince another poor soul to enter a new round of the Squid Games and tries to stop him from entering. He takes the Squid Corp business card from him so that he can't enter the games, and as he boards his plane, he has a change of heart and decides to put the people behind the games corporation on notice, claiming that he's going to take them down. That's why he says, I can't forgive you for the things that you've done. And they just keep telling him, player 456, please just get on the plane. It's for your own good. And then it just slams to black. Boom, cliffhanger. So obviously the first big twist reveal, the identity of the old man, there were several Easter eggs that foreshadowed his identity along the way that some of you probably noticed. During the first episode, you notice that he's contestant number 1, but his name Oh-il Nam literally translates from Korean to first man, as in the original man, the man who created the games. You notice starting with the first red light, green light game, and then throughout the rest of the games, he's never once afraid while they're actually playing, seemingly not worried for a second or concerned that he might die, fail, or be killed. It's because he knows what all the games are, because he's watched them for the last 30 plus years, and he knows exactly how to win them. You also start to see that it looks like the front man is tracking him to help keep him alive when things get really, really crazy. As if the old man is still kind of calling the shots from inside the dormitory. Like during the riot, when he stands up on the bunk and starts yelling after a little while, after a bunch of people had already been killed, the front man takes that as a cue to have the workers stop the riot finally. During that first game, you also notice that the giant doll that scans everyone for movement doesn't properly scan him the way that it scans all the other people. During the honeycomb game, he also refuses to trade for the umbrella shape, knowing that it would be way more difficult to complete. The marbles game is administered in an exact recreation of the neighborhood that he lived in as a child, and to boot, when he's playing with the main character, he totally messes with him the entire time and then bows out, effectively forfeiting to him, allowing him to continue to the next game. You do hear gunshots around the corner, but you never actually see the workers killing him. Even before the marbles game, he had started to look for a way out of the games because he knew that if he paired up with someone, that only one of them would survive. That's why he goes and sits in the corner when everyone is picking partners. Later, when the policeman also breaks into the front man's apartment and starts going through all the files of the players, he scans through all the contestants, but there's no file on the old man. When they're playing the tug-of-war game, it's the old man who tells them the exact way to win. He claims the strategy was one that he used to play the game as a child, winning against much bigger opponents, but it's implied that he actually learned the strategy after watching hundreds of teams play the game the past 30 years. So the other big WTF twist reveal was the identity of the front man being the police officer's older brother that he was searching for. There were several clues and Easter eggs, just like the old man reveal along the way, that revealed the front man's identity. Early on, when the policeman breaks into his brother's apartment to search for clues, he finds several questionable books around his room, like Theory of Desire, a book on surrealist art, just clues that his brother had gone super dark. Something weird was going on with him. Then he finds the Squid Game business card in a box wrapped with a bow that looks exactly like the coffins that the dead contestants were cremated in. In fact, the gift that the main character also gives his daughter in episode 1, a gun-shaped lighter, which itself is kind of a WTF thing to do, was also wrapped in a similar box that looked exactly like the coffins. Later, after the front man discovers the police officer's ID badge that he left behind inadvertently, he stares at it for way too long. And this is long before he's taken his mask off. Obviously, he recognizes his younger brother and orders his minions, then also the other workers, to capture him alive. Later during the marbles game, there's a huge Easter egg when the two female contestants are bonding with each other, just procrastinating so that they can enjoy some time together before one of them has to die, knowing that one of them will inevitably have to die. She references the 2015 Korean film Inside Men, quoting a line from the film, "Go to Mojito and have a glass of Maldives," literally saying, "Haven't you seen that movie, the one with Lee Byung-hun?" Like I said, that's literally the name of the actor playing the frontman. He's a pretty famous actor, so some of you might have recognized him as the original Storm Shadow from G.I. Joe, The Good, the Bad, and the Weird, I Saw the Devil. He's been in a bunch of stuff. One of the other biggest Easter eggs that a lot of you have probably noticed is that all 6 games that the contestants were forced to play were depicted in the tiles around the dormitory walls, meaning that they were shown everything that was going to happen to them from the moment that they entered the room in day 1. All they had to do was just pay attention to what was going on around them. The structure of the corporation that they use to run the games is heavily compartmentalized, so people only know what they need to know for whatever task it is that they're hired for. And you find that many of the workers are barely any better off than the contestants themselves, with many of them being killed for violating the rules of the games, just like the contestants. You also probably noticed the shapes on all the workers' masks, the triangles, circles, squares, all correspond to shapes taken from the shape of the Squid Game court. The actual Squid Game logo is also depicted as the hair clip on the giant doll in the first game. During that first recruitment slap game that everyone plays, all the contestants always choose the blue tile, even when they get to play another round. And here's another big one too. Most of the characters who wind up dying big WTF deaths foreshadow their own deaths in really karmic ways. Karma does play a big role in the series. Ali steals from his boss even though he was owed all that money, but then later winds up being betrayed by Sang-woo, who steals all of his marbles. Deok-soo jumps off a bridge to avoid being killed by gang members and then later himself dies after stepping off the glass bridge. Early on, the female main character threatens to slash a man's throat, then later dies after Sang-woo slashes her throat. Sang-woo, who had previously tried to kill himself, later saves his friend, the main character, by sacrificing himself. After the group wins the tug-of-war game, Min-yo talks about how powerful she felt leaning back like that, then later gets revenge on Deok-soo for betraying her by leaning back and pulling him over the edge with her. The main character even swears on his own mother's life, then finds that after he's won the game and returned to their apartment, she's died. Some other really cool Easter eggs foreshadowing other aspects of the games. During that first episode, the main character's number 456 is foreshadowed when he wins 4.56 million won at the racetrack. Also during the final episode, he winds up asking that banker to borrow 10,000 won, which is another callback to the time at the racetrack where he tried to get his 10,000 won back from the attendant. Like, hey, could I get that back, please? There's also a really obscure language reference that you probably wouldn't have gotten unless you speak Korean, but the female main character is from North Korea, like I said, but when she's in the games with the other contestants speaking to them, she uses a South Korean accent. When they show the flashbacks revealing her true identity with her younger brother, when she's speaking to him, she uses her true North Korean accent. When the police officer is rifling through all the files on the Squid Game Corporation, he finds that the games actually started in 1988 because that's when the first winner was crowned, and even though the old man dies in the finale, the other businessmen still continue the games as if nothing has changed, and the front man is still alive doing his job. And what about Squid Games Season 2? What would the story be? Obviously, there'd have to be multiple storylines, characters going through a new round of the games, like they teased, they're starting a new round of the games collecting people. While the main character comes back trying to use his money to infiltrate and gather enough evidence on the games to take down the organization more successfully than the police officer was able to do. It's not really an Easter egg, but really WTF moment that was also revealed by the creator. He said that making the series was so stressful that he lost 6 teeth. So it's almost like he himself was playing a Squid Game of sorts. But if you spotted any big Easter eggs or WTF moments that I didn't talk about during the video, just write them below in the comments. Everyone click here for that brand new Marvel Guardians of the Galaxy 3 Adam Warlock announcement, and click here for my brand new Eternals trailer video and Easter eggs. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, and just be sure to not enter any mysterious game of death if somebody gives you a business card.